The air was thick with tension. Lisa's hands shook as she reached for the crumpled envelope. It was addressed to her, but the handwriting was unfamiliar, sharp, aggressive. She hesitated before tearing it open, almost sensing that what she was about to read would alter her life forever. The moment her eyes scanned the paper, she could feel the color draining from her face. The words were harsh, unforgiving, accusing. "We cannot accept what you've done. You've betrayed us. We have no choice but to part ways. You are no longer welcome here." Lisa's heart stopped. She reread the letter, the sentences growing darker with every passing second. Betrayal. Abandonment. Her fingers trembled as she tried to hold the paper steady, but everything around her felt like it was spinning out of control. The house, once filled with laughter, now stood eerily quiet. It was a hollow shell, the echo of happier times long gone. Her eyes drifted to the crib in the corner of the room, where a tiny, innocent life slept soundly. The baby. Her baby. The baby who had caused all of this. A sob caught in her throat as she stared at him. How could they? How could they do this to her? To him? Her baby, a beautiful boy with dark skin and big, bright eyes, was the reason behind all the whispers. It didn't matter that she had carried him for 9 months, or that her love for him was undeniable and pure. It didn't matter that he was a miracle, a child who deserved nothing but affection and care. To the people who had once been her family, he was a symbol of betrayal. The door slammed shut behind her as she stepped away from the table, the letter still clenched in her fist. She could barely see through her tears, but the weight of her grief was overwhelming. This wasn't supposed to be her life. This wasn't how things were supposed to unfold. It had all started months ago, with the whispers, the sideways glances, the comments that should have been dismissed. But Lisa had brushed it off. She thought they were just people talking behind her back, people who didn't understand. It wasn't until the pregnancy had become too visible to ignore that the tone shifted. The judgment, the condemnation, the insinuations that her life was falling apart. She had hoped it would all pass. But now, here she was, alone, with a baby who hadn't asked for any of this. There were no other choices. She couldn't go back to her family. She couldn't undo the past. The baby had been born into a world of harsh realities, a world where the color of his skin had somehow made him a symbol of disgrace. Her chest tightened as she glanced back at him. The baby shifted in his crib, his little hands curling into fists, his face peaceful in sleep. Lisa longed to hold him, to cradle him and shield him from the world's cruelty. But she couldn't help but wonder. What kind of future did he have in this world? The silence in the room was deafening. She needed to move, to make sense of everything. She couldn't just stand still. Her emotions were a swirling storm, her mind racing 1,000,000 miles per minute. But then, the knock came. It wasn't like the soft, polite knocks she had grown accustomed to over the years. No, this was more forceful, insistent. It was a demand, not a request. Lisa froze, her breath caught in her throat. She didn't want to answer. She couldn't bear to face anyone right now. Not after the betrayal, not after the cruelty she had just read in that letter. Her heart thudded in her chest, louder than the knocks on the door. But a strange, gnawing curiosity tugged at her. What was waiting on the other side? She slowly crossed the room and stood before the door, her hand trembling as she reached for the handle. There was a moment of hesitation before she opened it. What she saw on the other side of the door made her blood run cold. Standing in front of her was the last person she expected, an older man, graying hair, wearing a dark coat. He was hunched, his shoulders weighed down with something deeper than fatigue. His name was Henry, and he had once been one of the few people who stood by her side when everything felt like it was falling apart. Henry had been her mentor, her friend, her ally in a world that had grown increasingly hostile toward her. But seeing him now, with that look in his eyes, Lisa knew something had changed. Something was different. "What are you doing here, Henry?" Her voice trembled, a mixture of relief and dread. He didn't speak immediately. He simply stared at her with an intensity that made her feel exposed. She could see the concern in his eyes, but also something darker, something more urgent. Something she couldn't quite place. "I came because you need to know the truth," Henry said quietly, his voice low but heavy with meaning. "There's more to this than you realize. And if you want to survive, you need to listen carefully." Lisa's heart pounded harder in her chest. "What do you mean? What truth? What's going on?" Henry glanced over his shoulder, his eyes darting back and forth as if to make sure no one was watching. Lisa could feel the hairs on the back of her neck rise. There was an odd, nervous energy about him now, something she had never seen before. It was as if he was afraid of something far more dangerous than anything she had faced. "Come with me," he said abruptly, turning away and walking toward the alley beside her house. Lisa stood there for a moment, frozen by his words. What was happening? What was so urgent that Henry had to speak in secret, away from prying eyes? But she couldn't stay here, trapped in the same place, facing the same accusations. She couldn't hide any longer. Her instincts kicked in. She grabbed her coat, gently scooped her baby into her arms, and stepped out the door. She was determined to follow Henry. Whatever he had to say, it had to be important. She had to understand what was happening to her baby, to the life she had once known. As she walked through the cold air, she could hear the distant sound of traffic, the usual hum of the neighborhood, but it felt distant now. Like she was living in a different world. A world where everything had turned upside down, where betrayal and fear hung in the air like thick smoke. They walked in silence, the only sound the crunch of their footsteps against the gravel. Lisa's mind raced. What truth could Henry be talking about? What had she missed? He led her to a secluded park, its benches empty, the streetlights casting long shadows. They stopped near a bench, and Henry motioned for her to sit. "Lisa," he began, his voice serious, "I've been following this for a while now. There's something you don't know, something about the baby." Lisa's heart skipped a beat. She felt her breath catch in her throat, her grip on her baby tightening. "What are you saying?" she whispered. Henry looked around once more, then leaned closer, lowering his voice to a near whisper. "It's not just about you. This goes much deeper than your family's rejection. They're all part of something bigger. Something dangerous. And your baby." Her pulse quickened, her mind racing. She could feel the gravity of his words, but her fear was overwhelming. "Your baby," Henry continued, "wasn't just born into this world as a symbol of scandal. He's part of something much darker than you ever imagined. And it's not just about skin color. It's about the legacy that's been hidden from you for years." Lisa's head spun. The shadows of doubt began to creep in. What legacy?" she asked, her voice trembling. Henry stood back, his eyes filled with uncertainty. "I can't explain everything right now. But if you want to understand what's really happening, if you want to know who's behind this, you'll have to trust me." Lisa felt the weight of his words sink in. There was no turning back now. The answers she had been searching for, the ones that had been elusive, were just within reach. But the question remained, what kind of truth was she about to uncover? "Henry," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "tell me everything." And with that, the journey into the unknown began. Lisa couldn't shake the words Henry had just spoken. His cryptic warning about the legacy her baby was born into haunted her every step. Every thought, every movement, seemed clouded by an ever-growing sense of dread. She had trusted Henry once, trusted him with her deepest fears and her most cherished dreams. But now, there was a sense of urgency in his voice, an anxiety she couldn't quite understand. She had walked out of her house, leaving behind the cruel rejection of her family, and now she was standing in the middle of an unfamiliar park with Henry, waiting for answers she wasn't sure she was ready to hear. What legacy? And why had he come to her now, of all times? She looked down at her baby, still cradled in her arms. His innocent face, so pure, so unaware of the storm brewing around him, seemed like the only thing that mattered anymore. All she wanted was to protect him, to keep him safe. But from what? Henry sighed deeply, clearly torn. He ran a hand through his graying hair and looked out at the dimly lit park. The stillness of the night felt oppressive, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next piece of the puzzle to fall into place. "Lisa," he began, his voice grave, "I know this sounds insane, but I need you to trust me." She nodded slowly, though doubt gnawed at her. Trust him? After everything? But Henry had always been there for her, even when the world seemed to turn its back. It wasn't the time to second-guess him. Not now. "There's a reason your family turned on you," Henry continued. "A reason they can't, or won't, talk about. Something they've been hiding for years. I know it's hard to believe, but your baby, he's caught in the middle of something far darker than you realize." Lisa's breath caught in her throat, the weight of his words sinking in. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why would they do this to me, to him?" Henry hesitated, his eyes flicking to the ground. He seemed to struggle with whether or not to say more. "It's not about your baby being black. It's not that simple," he said, his voice quieter now, like he was afraid someone might be listening. "It's about what he represents. You were never meant to have him, Lisa. There are forces they've been watching you both." Lisa's mind raced. Watching them? What was he talking about? She could barely comprehend his words, let alone process them. "What forces? Who's watching us?" she demanded, her voice now a mix of fear and confusion. "Why? What does any of this have to do with my family?" Henry exhaled sharply. "Your family has been a part of something much bigger for generations. A secret. A pact, of sorts. They believed in it, followed it without question. But when you had your baby, everything changed." Lisa's heart was pounding in her chest. "What are you saying, Henry? Are you telling me my family's been involved in some kind of cult or conspiracy? Is that what this is about?" Henry gave her a look that made her stomach twist. "Not a cult. Not exactly. But something like it, yes. Your family has been protecting something, a bloodline, a legacy that's been kept hidden for centuries. And your baby, Lisa, he's part of that legacy." The word seemed to echo in her head, bouncing around like a foreign language she couldn't quite grasp. A bloodline? A legacy? "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "That's insane. My family's they're just regular people. There's nothing special about them." Henry looked at her, his eyes filled with a sorrowful kind of understanding. "That's what they want you to believe. They've kept you in the dark, kept you from knowing the truth. But it's bigger than you can imagine." Lisa took a step back, her mind spinning. She felt the ground beneath her feet shifting, as if everything she knew to be real was now in question. She had always felt there was something off about her family. There had always been strange looks, hushed conversations, things she wasn't allowed to be a part of. But to think that they had been hiding something for generations? That was too much to bear. "You're saying my baby's part of some ancient bloodline?" Lisa's voice was small, barely audible as she tried to make sense of it. "What does that even mean? How is he involved in something like that?" Henry took a step forward, lowering his voice even further. "There are certain bloodlines that have always been seen as special. Unique. In some cultures, they're believed to hold immense power. Your son's birth, his very existence, wasn't an accident. It was foretold. And now, because of him, there are people who will stop at nothing to get him. Lisa felt her heart racing. People? Who are these people? What do they want with him? Henry's face grew darker. I don't know. Not everything is clear yet. But I've been investigating it for years, trying to piece it together. Your family, they're involved with a group that has ties to these powerful bloodlines. And they believe that your baby is part of something that could change everything. Lisa's stomach churned as she tried to take it all in. She looked down at her baby again, her heart breaking for him. He was just a child. A baby. How could any of this be real? There's something they want from him. Something they've been trying to get their hands on for a long time. And now, they think you know too much. That's why they turned on you. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. They think I know too much? Her voice cracked as she spoke. What do they think I know? I don't know anything. I don't understand any of this. Henry paused, his eyes darting nervously to the shadows around them. There's more to this, Lisa. Much more. But for now, we need to get you and your baby out of here. They'll be coming for you soon. And when they do, you won't be able to outrun them. Lisa's mind was spinning. What had she just heard? What was she supposed to do with this information? She couldn't fathom it. How could her life, her family, her baby, be tied to something so dark, so dangerous? What do we do? She asked, her voice shaking with fear and confusion. Where do we go? Henry's eyes met hers with a mixture of determination and regret. I've been trying to keep them off your back. But the truth is, Lisa, you're in far more danger than you realize. They've been watching you, watching both of you, for a long time. The only way to keep you safe now is to disappear. Lisa shook her head. Disappear? How? I can't just disappear. I have no one left. I can't leave everything behind. You don't have a choice, Henry said gently but firmly. They'll come for you, and when they do, you won't be able to protect yourself or your son. You have to trust me. We need to leave now, before it's too late. Lisa's breath quickened. Her heart raced with panic, with fear. But beneath it all, there was a strange pull, a sense that she had been living in the dark for far too long, and now, the truth was finally revealing itself. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with dangers she couldn't even begin to imagine. But one thing was clear, she could no longer hide from the truth. With one last, lingering look at the park, the life she had known, Lisa nodded. It was time to go. Henry motioned for her to follow him. Come with me. We're leaving tonight. Without another word, she stepped forward, her baby clutched tightly in her arms. The world was changing, and she was about to step into a story much bigger than anything she had ever known. The night was heavy with anticipation. Lisa walked beside Henry, her heart pounding with each step, her baby cradled tightly in her arms. Every shadow seemed to move in the corners of her vision, every sound amplified in the stillness of the dark. The air felt thicker now, as if the world around her was pressing in, tightening its grip. The weight of the unknown was suffocating, but she had no choice. She had to keep moving. Henry had been guiding her in silence for what felt like hours, his pace steady but urgent, like a man who knew time was running out. He didn't explain where they were going, or why they had to leave so suddenly, but Lisa knew that there was no turning back now. The truth Henry had shared with her, about the legacy, the bloodline, the dangerous people who had been watching her, was too much to ignore. Too much to dismiss as madness. But it didn't make sense. Nothing made sense. Her family, the ones who had rejected her, the ones who had abandoned her in the worst possible way, had been part of this dark, hidden world? A world of secrets and power? It was a reality she could hardly wrap her mind around. She had always thought of her family as ordinary people, with ordinary lives. But now, it seemed like everything she knew about them had been a lie. She glanced down at her baby, feeling his tiny breath against her chest. He was so peaceful, so innocent, unaware of the storm brewing around him. She would do anything to protect him. She would run to the ends of the earth if that was what it took. But the fear gnawing at her insides told her that this was far from over. It was only the beginning. Finally, Henry stopped at the edge of a small, dimly lit alley. His face was grim, and his eyes flicked nervously to the street behind them. "This is where we part ways," he said, his voice low but resolute. "I'll be watching from a distance, but you can't stay here for long. You're not safe in this city anymore." Lisa felt her stomach churn. "Where am I supposed to go? What's happening, Henry? I don't understand. I need to know what this is all about." Henry turned to face her, his expression softening just slightly. "I wish I could tell you everything, Lisa. But I can't. Not yet. You need to trust me. You're not ready for the full truth yet. But I can get you to someone who can help you." Lisa's brow furrowed in confusion. Who? Who can help me?" Henry looked over his shoulder once more, as if checking for danger, before leaning in closer. "There's a woman. Her name is Miriam. She knows more about the legacy than anyone. She's been tracking these people for years. She can help you understand what's going on, and more importantly, how to protect yourself." Lisa's mind was racing. Miriam? Who was she? How did Henry know her? But in the silence that followed, there was an urgency in Henry's eyes that Lisa couldn't ignore. "I know you're scared," Henry continued, his voice soft. "But you have to be strong now. Your baby's life depends on it." Lisa nodded, her eyes filled with fear but also a newfound determination. She had come this far, and she wasn't going to stop now. She had to find answers. She had to find a way to keep her son safe. Henry handed her a small piece of paper with an address scrawled on it. "Go to this place. Miriam will be waiting for you. Trust her. She'll explain everything. But don't tell anyone where you're going. Stay off the radar. They're already looking for you." Before Lisa could say anything, Henry turned and melted into the shadows, disappearing from her sight. She stood there for a moment, her mind reeling from the sudden change in direction. The weight of the responsibility she now carried was overwhelming. But she couldn't stop. Not now. She looked down at her baby again, a quiet vow forming in her heart. Whatever this legacy was, whatever these people wanted, she would protect him with every ounce of strength she had. She had no choice. Taking a deep breath, Lisa turned and walked toward the address Henry had given her, her footsteps steady but quick. The streets seemed emptier now, the night colder, as if the city itself was closing in around her. Every step felt like a countdown to something unknown, something dangerous. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. The address led her to a small, unassuming building in a quiet part of the city. It looked like any other, with a weathered sign hanging crookedly above the door. Lisa hesitated for a moment, unsure if she was walking into a trap. But the address matched, and Henry had spoken of Miriam with urgency. She had to trust him. She knocked on the door, her heart pounding in her chest. For a moment, there was silence, then the sound of footsteps approaching. The door creaked open, revealing a woman in her late 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She was dressed in simple, worn clothing, but there was something about her presence that commanded respect. "You must be Lisa," the woman said, her voice calm but strong. "Come in quickly." Lisa didn't hesitate. She stepped inside, feeling a rush of cold air as the door closed behind her. The small apartment was sparsely furnished, with only a few chairs and a table covered in papers. A map of the city was pinned to one wall, with several locations marked in red. "Miriam?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling. I don't know what's going on. Henry said you could help me. I need answers. Miriam studied her for a moment, her eyes piercing as she sized Lisa up. Then, without a word, she motioned for Lisa to sit at the table. She sat across from her, folding her hands together as if preparing to reveal something that would change everything. Before we go any further, I need to know something, Miriam said, her voice steady but intense. What do you know about your family's past? Lisa blinked, taken aback by the question. I don't understand. I've told you, I don't know anything. I was just abandoned. I don't know why. They rejected me because of my son. Because of the way he looks. Miriam's eyes softened slightly, but she didn't let her guard down. It's not about the way he looks. It's about what he is. What he represents. Lisa's breath caught in her throat. What does that mean? What do you mean by what he represents? Miriam leaned forward, her voice lowering to a whisper. Your baby isn't just a child. He's part of an ancient bloodline. A bloodline that's been hidden for centuries. There are people who will do anything to possess that bloodline, to control it. And now, they think your son is the key to everything. He's a direct descendant of something powerful, something dangerous. Lisa's mind reeled. This was it, the truth Henry had hinted at, the truth that had sent her fleeing into the night. No, she whispered, her voice shaking. That can't be true. My son is just a baby. He's just a child. He can't be part of some ancient bloodline. Miriam's gaze was unwavering. That's exactly what they want you to believe. They've spent generations covering it up, hiding the truth. Your family, Lisa, they've been protecting this secret. But now, it's out. And the people who want it, who want control of it, they'll stop at nothing to get it. Lisa's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to process it. This couldn't be real. It couldn't. But the look in Miriam's eyes, the gravity in her voice, it was too real to dismiss. The people after him, Lisa whispered, who are they? Why do they want him? What do they want with his bloodline? Miriam exhaled slowly, as if preparing herself for something difficult. They're part of a society, an organization that has existed in the shadows for centuries. They believe that whoever controls the bloodline will hold immense power. Your son, Lisa, is the key to that power. And they won't stop until they get him. Lisa felt the room spinning. The weight of Miriam's words settled over her like a heavy blanket. Her baby, the tiny child she had promised to protect at all costs, was at the center of something far darker than she had ever imagined. There's no time to lose, Miriam said urgently, her voice rising. They're already looking for you. We need to get you somewhere safe, somewhere they can't find you. Lisa felt the panic rising in her chest. Safe? How can I be safe when everyone is after him? Miriam's eyes were fierce, resolute. You can't do this alone, Lisa. But we have to move quickly. The clock is ticking. The city was quieter now, almost unnervingly so. The weight of what Miriam had revealed hung over Lisa like a suffocating fog. Her mind was racing, trying to piece together the fragments of truth she had been handed. Her son, a baby, was at the center of something vast and dangerous. He wasn't just a child. He wasn't just the innocent result of a relationship that had destroyed her family. He was part of an ancient bloodline, a bloodline that could alter the course of history. And people, dangerous people, were hunting him. Lisa's hands trembled as she held her son close, the comforting weight of his small body offering her only a fleeting sense of calm. Miriam had insisted they move quickly, that they couldn't stay in one place for too long. And yet, the fear gnawing at Lisa's insides made it almost impossible to think straight. Who were these people? Why did they want her son? Why had her family kept this secret for so long? And what was this bloodline that had the power to change everything? Miriam's words echoed in Lisa's mind, the people after him, they'll stop at nothing to get him. Where are we going? Lisa asked quietly, her voice breaking the tense silence that had settled in the small apartment. Miriam had been preparing them for the next step, but so far, she had said little about what to expect. Miriam, who had been quietly moving around the room, glancing out the window, turned to face Lisa. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a definite air of urgency to her movements. We need to go to a safe house. A place where they can't trace us. It's off the grid. Only a few people know about it. Lisa nodded, though her mind was filled with questions she couldn't yet bring herself to ask. She trusted Miriam, at least, she had to, but the enormity of what she was being thrust into was overwhelming. She had no answers, only questions. No direction, only fear. As Miriam led the way to the back of the apartment, Lisa's heart raced. This was the point of no return. Once she stepped out that door, there was no going back to the life she had known. Her old life, the one where she had a family, friends, a semblance of normalcy, those things were gone. All that mattered now was survival. Her son's survival. Miriam handed Lisa a small, inconspicuous duffel bag. Take this, she said. We won't have much time to prepare. We need to be ready for anything. Lisa looked down at the bag, then back up at Miriam. What's in it? Essentials. Money. Identification. Supplies, Miriam replied. You'll need it. Trust me. Lisa hesitated for only a moment before she took the bag. It was heavy with the weight of reality, things were about to get very real. Miriam's stoic demeanor didn't offer much comfort, but Lisa had no choice. She had to follow. They left the apartment in silence, the dim light of the street lamps casting long shadows as they made their way through the narrow alley. The night air was cold, and Lisa felt it seep into her bones, but it wasn't the chill of the evening that made her shiver. It was the nagging feeling that they were being watched. She glanced around, paranoid that someone might be lurking in the darkness, but there was no one. Just the quiet streets of the city, the occasional car passing by. Nothing out of the ordinary. But the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. It was as if the very air around her was charged with danger. It felt wrong, unnatural. They arrived at a nondescript van parked a few blocks away from the apartment. It was old, faded, its windows tinted to block any view from the outside. Miriam slid open the side door, gesturing for Lisa to climb inside. Get in, Miriam said. We're leaving the city. The further we are from here, the better. Lisa hesitated but followed Miriam's instructions, stepping into the van and sitting beside her. Miriam closed the door behind them, locking it with a soft click. The van's interior was dark, save for the faint light coming from the dashboard. A man was sitting in the driver's seat, his face obscured by the shadows. He nodded at Miriam as she entered. Everything set? She asked him. The man nodded, his voice low. Yeah. We've got a safe route out of the city. No one will be able to track us. Lisa felt her stomach drop. Safe route? What did that mean? Who were these people? And how did they know all this? We'll be on the move for a while, Miriam said, settling into her seat. But it's the only way to make sure you stay safe. Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that they were rushing into something dangerous. But Miriam's confidence, the way she spoke with such certainty, gave her a sliver of hope. Maybe these people knew what they were doing. Maybe they could protect her son. The van started with a low hum, and they drove into the night, the city fading behind them. Lisa couldn't help but glance over her shoulder, watching as the familiar skyline of the city receded into the distance. She felt a pang of loss. She had spent so much time trying to hold on to the life she once had, but now, it felt like a distant memory. A life that no longer belonged to her. As they drove, Miriam explained a little more about the situation, though not nearly enough. She mentioned a network of people who had been tracking the mysterious group after them for years. These were people who had been investigating the ancient bloodlines, the secret organizations that had existed in the shadows for centuries. They were the ones who had discovered Lisa's family's involvement with these groups. And now, they were trying to protect her. "Your family has been part of something that goes back hundreds of years," Miriam said, her voice low but steady. "They've been protecting this bloodline, keeping it hidden. But now, it's out in the open, and there are people who will stop at nothing to gain control of it." Lisa felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She had always known there was something strange about her family. She had always felt like an outsider, like there were things they weren't telling her. But to think that her entire family had been involved in something so dangerous, so secretive, it was almost too much to bear. "But why me?" Lisa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why is my baby so important?" Miriam's gaze was distant, as if she were grappling with a truth she hadn't yet fully accepted. "Your son is the key. He's a direct descendant of an ancient bloodline, a bloodline that's been protected for centuries. The people who are after him believe that whoever controls his bloodline will have access to unimaginable power." Lisa felt the weight of Miriam's words settle on her like a heavy stone. Unimaginable power. It sounded like something out of a fantasy novel, not her life. But the terror in Miriam's eyes, the urgency in her voice, it made it clear that this was no fairy tale. The van continued to move through the darkened streets, the headlights cutting through the night like a beacon. Lisa sat back in her seat, trying to steady her breath. She needed to be strong, for her son. For him. Time seemed to stretch as the hours passed, the landscape outside the van blurring as they drove further and further from the city. Lisa wasn't sure how long they had been driving, an hour, 2 hours, maybe more. She felt the weight of exhaustion beginning to creep in, but she couldn't afford to sleep. Not yet. Not when they were still so vulnerable. "We're almost there," Miriam said after a long silence. "Just a few more miles." Lisa nodded, trying to calm the storm of thoughts in her mind. She had no idea what awaited her at the end of this journey, but there was no turning back now. She was in this for the long haul. As the van drove through the winding roads, Lisa could feel the danger closing in. They weren't just running from a family secret anymore. They were running from something far bigger, far darker. And no matter how far they traveled, no matter how many miles they put between themselves and the city, it felt like the shadows were following them. Eventually, the van came to a stop. Miriam turned to Lisa, her expression serious. "Stay quiet. Stay close. No matter what happens, don't draw attention to yourself." Lisa nodded, her heart hammering in her chest as she braced herself for whatever was coming next. The van came to a quiet stop on a remote stretch of dirt road, hidden away from the bustling noise of the city they'd left behind. The faint hum of the engine died out, and for a brief moment, all Lisa could hear was the sound of her own breath and the rustle of leaves in the wind. Miriam looked out of the front windshield, scanning the area, her expression serious, unreadable. It was as if the very air around them had thickened, saturated with the sense that something big was about to unfold. "Stay here," Miriam said, her voice clipped. "I'll check the area." Before Lisa could respond, Miriam was already out of the van, moving quickly into the darkness. Lisa stared after her, her heart racing, her mind spinning. The van's interior felt almost suffocating now, like the walls were closing in on her. She had no idea what was coming next, but she knew it wasn't going to be good. There was no way to escape this, no way to go back to the life she had once known. Her baby shifted in her arms, the small weight a grounding force, a reminder of everything she had to protect. Everything that mattered. Her fingers lightly brushed the top of his head as she whispered to herself, "I'll keep you safe, no matter what." The silence felt endless, and every moment that passed only made her more anxious. She needed answers. Miriam knew more about what was happening, and Lisa needed to understand the truth, no matter how frightening it might be. After what felt like an eternity, Miriam finally returned to the van. Her movements were swift, purposeful, and Lisa couldn't help but notice the slight tension in her shoulders. Miriam wasn't one to show fear, but there was something different about her demeanor now. "We need to go now," Miriam said, urgency threading her voice. "What's going on?" Lisa asked, her voice low, filled with apprehension. "There's no time to explain," Miriam replied, getting back into the van and starting the engine with a harsh turn of the key. "Just trust me. They're already on our trail." Lisa's heart sank. They'd been discovered. The people who had been chasing her, the ones who wanted her son, had found them. The weight of it all pressed down on her chest, but there was no time to dwell on it. Miriam wasn't panicking, so Lisa forced herself not to panic either. She focused on her breathing, trying to steady her nerves. The van accelerated, the wheels crunching on the gravel as they sped down the narrow dirt road. Miriam's eyes were fixed ahead, her focus intense. Lisa could see the muscles in her jaw clenching, the way her hands gripped the steering wheel as if her life depended on it. "They're coming after us," Miriam said, her voice cold but steady. "They must have picked up our trail when we left the city. They'll be here any minute." Lisa's mind raced, and her thoughts began to jumble. Who were they? How had they found them so quickly? Was it because of the bloodline? Was it because her son was a target? Miriam's next words were sharp, slicing through the confusion in Lisa's mind. "There's a safe house nearby, but it's not as secure as I thought. We'll need to make a few detours to shake them off." The van swerved, taking sharp turns that made Lisa grip the seat beneath her. Every bump in the road sent her heart into her throat. It was as if the entire world had shifted, and everything she once believed to be true was crumbling at her feet. She had trusted Henry. She had trusted Miriam. But now, the ground felt shaky, and she couldn't escape the feeling that they were being led into something far darker than they knew. After what felt like an hour of intense driving, turning corners, doubling back on roads, and swerving in and out of tree-lined paths, the van finally slowed. Miriam pulled the vehicle to a stop in front of an old cabin nestled in a secluded clearing. The windows were dark, the structure weathered, with a creaky porch that looked like it hadn't been used in years. "We're here," Miriam said, not sounding the least bit relieved. "Get out. Quickly." Lisa hesitated but grabbed the bag Miriam had given her earlier, clutching it close. She felt the weight of it again, the heaviness of the unknown. She wasn't sure what awaited her here, but she couldn't afford to question Miriam's orders now. They were out of time. The two of them made their way to the cabin, Lisa glancing over her shoulder every few steps. She half expected someone to leap out of the shadows, to spring from the darkness and drag them back into whatever nightmare they were trying to escape. But the woods were eerily quiet. Too quiet. Miriam pushed open the door to the cabin, revealing a dim interior. The air smelled musty, as though the place hadn't been lived in for years. Dust hung thick in the air, and cobwebs decorated the corners of the room. There was an old fireplace in the center, a few mismatched chairs, and a small kitchen area. It was nothing like the modern homes Lisa had grown accustomed to. It felt abandoned, forgotten. Just like everything she thought she knew. Miriam led her inside, locking the door behind them. "We'll stay here for the night," she said, her voice still tense. "We'll figure out our next move in the morning." Lisa nodded, though her mind was still racing. "What now? What do we do? I need to understand what's happening, Miriam." Miriam exhaled slowly, a deep sigh that seemed to carry the weight of everything she had been holding back. She glanced around the cabin, almost as if looking for a sign, before turning to face Lisa. "Your son," Miriam began, "is the key to everything. I know you've been hearing pieces of the story, but now it's time you know the whole truth." Lisa swallowed hard, her throat dry. What do you mean? The key to what? What is it about him? About this bloodline? Miriam took a step closer, her eyes locked on Lisa's with a gravity that made Lisa's stomach twist. This bloodline, she said, her voice low and urgent, has been passed down for centuries. It's tied to an ancient power, something that could change the fate of the entire world. There are organizations, secret societies, that have been trying to gain control of this power for generations. They believe that whoever controls this bloodline controls everything. Lisa felt a cold chill wash over her. And my son, my baby, he's part of this? Miriam nodded solemnly. Yes. Your son is the direct descendant of a bloodline that's been hidden for centuries. People who want to control the world, who want power beyond imagination, they're after him. They'll stop at nothing to get him. Lisa's mind was spinning. It didn't make sense. It couldn't. Her son was just a child, an innocent baby. How could he be the center of something so enormous, so dangerous? Why me? Why wasn't I told? Lisa asked, her voice cracking. Why didn't my family tell me any of this? Miriam looked away for a moment, her expression tight with something akin to regret. Your family has been part of these secret societies for generations. They were tasked with protecting the bloodline. Keeping it hidden. But when you had your son, they knew things had changed. The bloodline was alive again, and those who want it would stop at nothing to find him. They couldn't risk you being involved in this, but it's too late now. They couldn't keep you safe anymore. Lisa's mind reeled. The truth was far darker than she could have ever imagined. But it still didn't answer her most pressing question. Why me? Why wasn't I given a choice in all of this? Miriam's eyes softened. You were a pawn, Lisa. You were used, just like everyone else. Your family made sure that you were unaware, so that when the time came, you wouldn't question it. You were meant to carry on the bloodline, but not in the way you think. Lisa felt a lump form in her throat, her eyes stinging. So I'm just a tool? A part of some game? Is that all I am? No, Miriam said quickly. You're much more than that. You're a mother. And that makes you a force to be reckoned with. It's why they underestimated you. They didn't think you'd fight for your son. Lisa wiped her eyes, taking a deep breath to steady herself. So what now? What do I do? How do I protect him? Miriam reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. There's one person who can help you now. A man named Ezra. He's one of the last of a group of ancient protectors. They've been guarding the bloodlines for centuries. He knows more than anyone about what's coming. He's the only one who can help you now. Lisa took the envelope, her heart beating faster. Ezra? How do we find him? Miriam stood up straight, her face hardening. He'll find you. And when he does, everything will change. The world outside was still silent, but inside the cabin, the weight of the truth pressed heavily on Lisa's chest. She was no longer just running for her life. She was running to uncover a truth so immense, so terrifying, it could shatter everything she believed in. And she was running out of time. The air inside the cabin was thick with silence, the kind of silence that pressed down on you until you could barely breathe. Lisa held the envelope in her hands, its contents a mysterious promise that could lead them to safety, or to their doom. Ezra, the man Miriam had spoken of, was the key. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the real danger wasn't just from the people who were hunting them. It was the truth itself. Miriam stood near the window, scanning the surrounding woods. She'd been tense all evening, her eyes constantly flicking to the door, to the shadows outside. She knew something Lisa didn't, and that uncertainty gnawed at Lisa's mind. Every question she had asked had been met with vague answers, cryptic warnings, but never the full truth. The door creaked open suddenly, and Lisa's heart lurched. Miriam's eyes widened, and she motioned for Lisa to stay quiet. Without a word, Miriam moved to the door, opening it slowly. A figure stood on the threshold, bathed in the pale light of the moon. His features were sharp, his eyes piercing and intense. Ezra. The man who could unravel the mysteries Lisa had been chasing for so long. "You're late," Miriam said, her voice steady but with a sharp edge. "We almost thought you weren't coming." Ezra stepped inside without answering, his gaze sweeping across the cabin. His presence was commanding, yet there was an air of weariness about him, as if he had seen too much of the darkness in the world. Lisa stood frozen, unsure what to do. This was the man who held the answers, but the questions in her mind were growing faster than the answers could come. Her son shifted restlessly in her arms, a reminder of the peril they were in. She couldn't afford to hesitate. "Miriam," Ezra said, his voice calm but firm. "I assume she knows everything now?" Miriam nodded, her expression unreadable. "She knows what I could tell her. But I can't tell her everything. Not yet." Ezra turned to Lisa then, his eyes narrowing slightly as he sized her up. "You've been through a lot, I'm sure. I wish there was another way, but there isn't. The people after you, they're closer than you think. And they're not going to stop." Lisa opened her mouth to speak, but Ezra raised a hand, cutting her off. "I know you have questions. I know you want to understand, but right now, there's no time for explanations. There's only time to survive." "Survive?" Lisa repeated, her voice trembling. "What are you talking about? What is it they want from my son? Why is this happening to us?" Ezra's gaze softened for just a moment, and for the first time, Lisa saw a flicker of sympathy in his eyes. "Your son is more important than you can imagine. He's the last living descendant of a bloodline that has been hidden for centuries. It's not just about power, though, this bloodline has something else. It's not just a legacy of rulers or kings, it's a lineage tied to something much darker. There are ancient forces that have been fighting over this bloodline for generations. They've all believed that whoever controls the last of it will be able to wield unimaginable power. But why my son?" Lisa whispered, her voice cracking with disbelief. Ezra met her gaze and took a step closer. "Because your son is the final piece of the puzzle. The bloodline was fragmented years ago, scattered across the globe to keep it hidden, to keep it safe. But your son is the key to bringing it all back together." Lisa's mind was racing. None of this made sense. A bloodline, ancient powers, a secret war that had been fought in the shadows for centuries, she was a part of something she had never even known about. A pawn in a game she didn't understand. "Why didn't you tell me?" Lisa demanded, the frustration bubbling to the surface. "Why didn't anyone tell me? Why did I have to learn this all on my own, through Miriam?" "Because you weren't supposed to know," Ezra said, his voice soft but insistent. "Your family, Miriam, and others, worked to keep you safe. They kept you in the dark to protect you. But now, there's no more hiding. The people after you aren't just ordinary men. They're part of a network that has been hunting your bloodline for centuries. And they're closing in." The words hit Lisa like a punch to the gut. They had been hiding from something. Hiding from who? "They are going to find us, aren't they?" Lisa whispered, the realization dawning on her. "No matter where we go, they'll never stop hunting us." Ezra's silence was answer enough. He wasn't offering false hope. He was a man who knew how the world worked, and how it didn't. "We don't have much time," Miriam said, her voice sharp. "We need to move. Now." Ezra turned to her, his expression hardening. "You know the plan. Let's go." Lisa felt a sharp pang of fear, but she knew there was no choice. There was no more running, no more hiding. It was time to face what had been chasing them all this time. Her son's legacy, and whatever it meant for their future. Miriam and Ezra moved quickly, taking charge of the situation with a confidence that Lisa didn't have. Her whole body felt like it was buzzing with nerves, but she focused on her son, clinging to him like a lifeline. His tiny hand wrapped around her finger, and for a brief moment, she felt a surge of strength. She would protect him. She had to. The cabin had no real defenses. It was an old, forgotten place, built to blend into the landscape, to be overlooked. But now it felt like a trap, a ticking clock in the middle of nowhere. Lisa's heart was racing as she followed Miriam and Ezra through the darkened woods, her feet moving almost on autopilot. They reached the edge of the clearing, where a darkened vehicle was waiting. Lisa didn't ask questions. She got in, the cold metal of the car's interior seeming to match the icy feeling crawling up her spine. Ezra and Miriam were already inside, their eyes scanning the surrounding trees. The tension in the air was palpable. "Move," Ezra ordered, and the car lurched forward, quickly disappearing into the night. As they drove, Lisa sat in the back, her son cradled in her arms. Her thoughts were a whirl of confusion, fear, and disbelief. She still couldn't process everything that had happened, the revelations, the chase, the terrifying people who had been hunting her. And now, the last piece of the puzzle had been revealed. Her son was part of something ancient, something that could change the world. They drove for what felt like hours, the world outside the car window a blur of trees and shadows. Lisa could feel the weight of the situation pressing on her chest, suffocating her. Where were they going? What would happen next? Finally, the car slowed, pulling off the main road and into a secluded driveway. The headlights cast long shadows over an old building, one that looked even more worn and secretive than the cabin they had just left. It was hidden, isolated, and Lisa felt a chill run down her spine as they pulled up to the entrance. "This is it," Ezra said quietly. "We're safe here for now." But Lisa didn't feel safe. Not anymore. The door opened, and a tall figure emerged from the shadows. The man looked familiar, but it wasn't until he stepped into the light that Lisa recognized him. "Henry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Henry stood before them, his eyes filled with a mix of guilt and determination. He had been a part of this world all along. And now, he was the one who could explain everything.